All right, so today I am here with Susanna Johnson and Tania Creamer of the Heart of Phoenix Equine Rescue, and I want to welcome you guys to the Greatest Horseman podcast. And I truly consider you guys to be great horsemen because of the work that you guys do with horses, the number of horses that you guys have saved. And I know it's not just you guys, it's a team effort, it's the organization.
Yes.
But you guys are at the forefront, and it is incredible the work that you guys do, not just for the horses, but the families, the people that are involved, the volunteers, the homes that they're placed in. It's absolutely incredible. So welcome to the Greatest Horseman. I'm so glad to have you guys. And I really want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Heart of Phoenix Horse Rescue, but also kind of like about your guys, your background, your friendship, if we can dig into that a little bit. And let's start with that, because I know that that's a really interesting story. How did you two meet?
So Susanna and I are very, very different.
Very different.
Personalities. And we often say how we wouldn't be friends if it hadn't have been for the rescue. And I think it took years in the rescue to really think of Susanna, in my mind, as a friend rather than a fellow rescuer.
She tends to make you prove yourself.
Yes, I really can work with somebody and be very congenial for many years and be totally disconnected from the person. And it is necessary in what I do. But I really do. You have to prove who you are to me. And
She's very glass half empty.
yeah, I'm a pessimist.
You
But
sound
also,
like you sound like a horse.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's probably some connection there. But also, I think what often brings people together in friendships are common factors where personality and pastimes kind of commingle. But Susanna doesn't even live near the rescue, and there are no things that we really enjoy outside of horses. And we aren't even traditional horse people.
No.
You know, neither of us spend much time riding, not any, Susanna, not anymore. It's kind of we really believe in the effort of saving horses. So that was for a long time the only thing. But recently,
we had books in common because we have that one series that's both your and I's favorite.
yeah, we would see these little sprinkled things.
And we do headstands, and we don't know anybody else
we
that
travel
does.
and do headstands. But But the way it started, before we get into how we've become very close, is Susanna is a horse thief. So tell them what you did,
They still
Susanna.
get hung in Texas. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a dangerous thing.
Actually, it's still on the laws in Kentucky too. Yeah, so the person who taught me to ride as an adult and taught my daughter to ride had adopted a Heart of Phoenix horse, and Heart of Phoenix didn't know the horse was going blind, so she had adopted her for a lesson program, and she wasn't working out at all. She was rearing, and the only person that could get along with her was my daughter. And she really quite liked the mare and rode her a lot at Susan's barn. And so when we went to move to Kentucky, Susan's like, look, Raven likes her and she doesn't work for me. Why don't you take her with you? So we did. We didn't know we weren't supposed to.
And Susan hadn't read her contract very well. And this was 13 years ago, 12 to 13. And
Yeah.
it was a much more informal process. We were tracking, 6 or 7 horses at a time, whereas now it's thousands, a couple over 1,000.
Sure.
So it was much more informal, but not so much that I didn't keep on top of, hey, when I checked in.
Yeah.
So now this horse is in Kentucky, and it's
Okay.
not like this went on a long time. You hadn't been there long.
Like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I've been
so
there
it
like
was
3 weeks.
fast. I checked in, and what had happened is the Humane Society of the United States state director, some are boarded at the same place. It's one of the reasons I felt comfortable with this horse going there. And at the time when the horse went, she was being ridden and she was doing great, but she had been there in that barn about 6 months.
Yeah.
And in that setting, I guess the side had started to deteriorate. They didn't know that it was happening, and they just thought it was behavioral things. And so, but nobody reached out to say anything had changed.
Gotcha.
So I check in with Summer. I'm like, hey, I have had a hard time getting a hold of Susan. There's not really good service there. How is Natez? Oh, well, she let Susanna take her to Kentucky. I said, who is Susanna? And why does she have our horse in Kentucky? And so she goes, oh, gosh, I just assumed that you knew. I did not know. I need her contact information right now. She said, well, I just know we're on Facebook. So she sent me the link. And I scrolled back recently and print screened this conversation, our first conversation.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I can go all the way back. And I think, so by this time, this would be 12-ish, 12 and a half years ago.
Okay.
I send her this message and I say, This is Tania Creamer. I'm with Heart of Phoenix Equine Rescue, and you have a Heart of Phoenix horse that belongs to us, and you should not have her. She was an adopted horse. She's not supposed to be with you, and I need you to contact me right now and go outside right now and get me pictures of this horse and let me see that she's okay. And Susanna's like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
I hate for people to be mad at me.
Yeah, and I mean, and so Susanna goes out, the mare looks fine, and it's never been our goal to like yank a horse away if it's safe, but just knowing the horse was safe and keeping track of her.
It was probably 2 months later we found out that she was actually losing her vision because I needed to have her vaccinated. And my veterinarian's like, did you know this mare can't see? And I'm like, well, that explains a lot.
And honestly, that happens a lot.
Sure.
So from that, I still had never met Susanna in person. We felt comfortable. The horse is there. She's fine. We know where she is. We have that information. Susanna has a lot of property out there, and probably because I had been so aggressive, she's like, I'd like to donate some hay. And I was like, well, you should, you horse.
You did not.
No. I was like, oh, that would be lovely. So she brought the hay into West Virginia, and we met her, and that was maybe 6 more months later, And so it was this evolution of, I posted about this really difficult horse that we didn't have space for, and it was not Susanna and her daughter. Her name ended up being Sky, and Susanna and her daughter said, hey, I think we could go out and help with this horse. So it started as a foster, just a foster for one horse.
Okay.
And then ended up with some helping us network some nurse mare foals on. And it just, as we do, once we have a hold of somebody,
Well, where I really got the end was correcting her double type sentences and all that.
After I knew her for about probably a year, I said, hey, would you like to be an editor on the hop page? Because I type things out and there will be an extra sentence. There's some crazy thing I've copied and pasted, who knows? And I am not going back to that stuff. And the way I do everything in the moment, be great if you could hop on there and, hey, instead of messaging me saying,
what does this mean?
This needs fixed.
You got this word 3 times in here in a row.
Now, what is the hop page? What is that?
Heart of Phoenix Equine Rescue. So the Facebook page.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I said, if you could do that, that would be a help. And she was like, oh yeah, I'd be happy to. And so between fostering a little bit and becoming originally an editor, and then later I said, just from knowing her a little bit more, I said, you seem to have an interest in explaining what. And I'm not saying this to be negative. It's just the way people think to me, they're the mundane things that we take for granted people know how to do, but they don't. Little things. It started out with how to properly hang your gate with the hinges, just stuff like that. And she, I said, well, if you would like to post that kind of content, I think people would enjoy that. It's not something I have any interest in doing, but I think it's something that really would connect with people and they would like to have those tips. I think it more was tips originally of how to make things easier. And Susanna's really mechanical and likes to take her tractor out and brush hog and things like this. So, and just lots of little suggestions, which morphed into something that is now very instrumental and very well known about the page, are these educational posts. And while I do some, I don't have any interest in the breadth of things she does, such as how to do this better with watering, or what to do if you don't have electric for your water trough out in the,
Sure.
And that's just a small little drop of what it ended up being. So now a lot of what the Heart of Phoenix Facebook page is known for comes from that initial, hey, Susanna, do you want to edit my posts?
Yeah.
And it grew into what I think the page is even mostly known for, is a source of education, and what has allowed it to grow and reach people who have no interest in adoption, but they're
Sure.
horse people, and that's so important to us.
Yeah, and the reason why that worked out so well, I think, in part is because I didn't come to horses until my daughter was 6, because my mom was deathly afraid of them. She wouldn't hardly ever let me be around them. She'd been kicked in the stomach by a pony when she was a kid, and that trauma never left her. So I wasn't allowed to be around horses. And so my middle daughter, when she was 6, asked for riding lessons, and I contacted Susan's barn, and she let me work off Raven's riding lessons. And after I'd been there a while, she's like, well, I'll just teach you to ride too. So I had the benefit of not growing up with horses, so understanding these things that people who come to horses not having grown up with them might be missing in their education and what might be beneficial to them. Because when I was 22, I didn't know that the top hinge on a gate should be hung upside down so the horse can't take the gate off.
Sure.
So
Well, and I think one thing that I came to, I mean, I had horses in my life, most of my life, but there were times, I was never the main caregiver. I was, my grandfather took care of the horse, and I was the granddaughter that came and messed with the horses. I didn't have.
You were around them.
I was
but you
around them,
weren't-
and I rode, and I took lessons for a short period of time, maybe for 2 years.
they were her hobby, not her life.
But it was not, I wasn't growing up in a horse family. But when I started the rescue, at the same time I started raising dairy cattle and dairy goats,
Okay.
which are, dairy goats specifically, but cows too. Dairy animals are so difficult to have. The husbandry is so complex.
It is.
And I was raised, had 50, ultimately what ended up being a herd of 50 plus dairy goats and a small herd of miniature jerseys.
And that's something we share in common. I grew up on a dairy farm, hand milking goats.
Right, same. I hand milk, except my high
a lot of
production
work.
cow. And you start to, I really think the success of Heart of Phoenix, when we started, we were really known for rehabilitation of extreme emaciated horses with high success, 100% success, really. And I attributed that to my understanding of mineral need, like hypocalcemia,
Sure.
and recognizing what animals actually need in a state of crisis. So I started thinking about mineral stuff with horses as a byproduct of raising dairy animals. And it allowed very early on us to have success people weren't seeing elsewhere, where every horse we were getting was a body score of 1.
Wow.
If not, and I always say, I argue they can be less, because a body score of 1 means there's no fat, but we've had horses that had no discernible fat that were starting to lose, pockets of muscle. So, and rehab them all.
And for people at home who don't know what that looks like that's a horse that looks like death warmed over.
Yeah,
they look
you
like
can
a
see
skeleton.
every bone, every connection, every vertebrae. And so it was during the time where the horse market was so down, we saw every horse that came through was a total skeleton. And I realized how important that was. So I started talking about the mineral needs of horses from day one, and nobody was talking about it. And the way to rehab a horse and the balance of your calcium and phosphorus and potassium and magnesium, and started seeing that horses that were emaciated that needed water and food would go to the loose mineral before they would go to water or food. And what I think has been beautiful about that is I am very much like that discovery thing, and here I understand this. But then Susanna, through coming on board, has, I think, much more, she has a voracious need to understand a lot more than I do. I'm the that big picture. And it allowed Susanna to pick up and kind of go with that and let's break that down. And what is that, the implications to feet and color of the horse and different things. And there were parts where I understood, in goats, the mineral needs being balanced allow you to, have a better control of parasites. Well, then how does that apply in horses? So
for a calving mother, you need to pump them with CalMag,
Right.
get them up.
And I've used CMPK, which I would have used in down cows for horses, because that's what they need when they're in a state of crisis emaciated. That's what will get them down when you start seeing a horse crash. It's similar to, and then I started
Makes a lot of
researching,
sense.
why that refeeding in humans, because there really isn't good research in horses. And Susanna coming on board, then it really, I harped on mineral stuff so much, but it really, I think, gave that spark for her to take it and run with it in other directions that have been so important in adopted horses. After they've been adopted, they'll reach out to Susanna, and just the way things connect and why they go, it really doesn't, I don't think it's happenstance anyway, but it kind of defies it just didn't, just didn't land that way by chance.
There have been so many adopted horses that have come up with health problems that I've worked with the people and turned them really beautifully around, fixed those problems.
Yeah.
See, and that is so cool because, it's one thing, if somebody gets a horse and then they take it home and they struggle and they're like, oh, well, let me send it back and get a different one or try something. But the fact that you guys are able to really walk people by the hand and give them support, and that, you know, you don't just turn them loose, like you're there with them so that
Yeah.
you can make sure that they're as successful as possible. That's really huge.
Well,
we had a adopter last year who lived fairly far away, who made a point to chase me down and wait till I wasn't live streaming to tell me how much that I turned her horse
At
around.
the ATFO.
And showed me pictures. The pictures were taken exactly a year apart, like almost to the day. And the pictures were, and it was just like wild. I was like, this is so great. That's one of my favorite parts really from last year, was that her chasing me down. She stood by my truck for a half an hour waiting for me to stop
That is
live
so
streaming.
cool.
Well, and I'll get notes about all kinds of impacts of Heart of Phoenix, and often like in the mail, like when people mail a donation or just a card, and it'll be like, thank you so much for this particular article. You know, it's made such a difference, and you know, whatever it's about. And it can be, it's a plethora of things that are covered on the page. And also we know a lot of people, and I'll often see something someone else says, and I'll be like, you know, that makes me think this direction. Can I, like, I just, you know, let me flesh this thing out. And, you know, because I think you're onto something here, and let's run with that.
We're chasers. But I think
and-
both of us are chasers in kind of a different way.
Yeah. So
Explain that a little bit. When you say chaser, what does that mean?
If I watch something and it's like, I never thought about that idea, I'll go chase it down and look for more research. Like one of the things that's popped up recently.
we do it on the phone.
Yeah, we do it on the phone. One of the things that's popped up recently is I saw a study that came out from Australia that they're finding out that horses with high parasite levels have low copper, and they don't know which one is the cause or which one is the effect yet. And I think that that's super duper
Well, when she
interesting.
told me that, I said, well, in goats, it's established that you have to copper bolus to prevent high parasite load.
Sure.
But in horses, there's not the same information available. And
we talk about this all the time because horses aren't money-making creatures. You know, you don't have to have your horse in good health
the carcass in and of
to
itself.
get lovely milk. So
Sure,
there's just
sure.
not the research and funding put into that. The money for horses is selling you this supplement to fix this problem that you need 2 more supplements to counteract that supplement.
Well, and I
Sounds like our
understand.
healthcare system.
I say that
Exactly.
too. We
We
say
say
that.
that
We
all
say
the
that all the
time.
time, that horses and humans, like, you know, there's no benefit. But in livestock that are selling a product, it hinges on the truth and in the research. The animal's going to show that, and it's vital to an industry that's controlled by big money,
Sure.
far bigger than the horse industry, that the research be accurate, because the animal carcass or their product is going to show that. Well, for humans and for horses, it doesn't,
value's not there,
it doesn't matter. You can sell them snake oil and it's fine. And that does happen a lot in horses. But I really like that statement of like holding the adopter by the hand.
Yeah.
And I often say, like, when you adopt a horse from us, we're not controlling this. We're a resource for you. And people, there's this kind of argument of what is wrong with the horse industry? Where does the root come? Like, what's the root issue? And people will say it's all kinds of things. The truth is, it's people are not qualified to have the horses. They're taking horses home, unqualified to do so, creating a problem horse and cycling through horse after horse, and those horses end up in a bad situation. People will say it's excess breeding, and there is a little, you know, there is some excess breeding, some. But really, tons of people are always looking to get a horse. But if you ask the question, it's, well, they've had 10 others and it didn't work.
They love the idea and not the lifestyle. That's the problem. Because the reality is that if you're keeping your horses well, it's work.
Yes, it is.
And it's a constant up and down. Oh, well, now the grass has changed, so I have to change this. Because I have 2 horses. I have a Hoflinger Cross and a Morab. And my Morab is probably equine metabolic syndrome, but I won't do the testing. And my Hoffy is probably Cushing's. And it took me 18 months to straighten them out of hard work, like really hard, a lot of research and hard work and walking around their dry lot and sprinkling a little bit of hay here and a little bit of hay there so that they would get their steps in. And now, 18 months later, this year has been fantastic because I've only had to pull them off the grass 5 days this year. And last year, they were off the grass all the days. So, but people like the lifestyle and the thought of the horses. I mean, not the lifestyle, but they like the idea and the thought of horses, but not the lifestyle.
Well, and so I think it's a resource to have somebody to hold your hand, is the point. It sounds a little invasive, but it's a resource, and it's a free resource, you know?
Sure, absolutely.
And so it is important. It doesn't have to be Heart of Phoenix, but to have somebody that you can really depend on. I think it's better to have multiple somebodies, because if you
Yes.
get a mentor, there's going to be areas they're wrong about. And that's
Sure.
the benefit of Heart of Phoenix is, buddy, within our group, if you're wrong, somebody's going to tell you.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
then,
like we argue it out and come up with here's what process has proven to be true. Doesn't matter what your opinion is. That's
Right.
lovely. We all have them, but we try very hard to, with a collaborative effort, to what is the real truth here? And it doesn't mean we've gotten there about everything, but it isn't
Yeah.
just Tania says do this. That is
Sure.
not the case. It's not just Susanna said or Stephanie says. There's a large group of people, and this is what we have mostly agreed is the truth based on what is decades combined, or 100 years of experience collectively, and that matters. So have a resource, but have multiple resources you trust. Because,
Absolutely. And you bring up that point about like having different mentors, people that pour into you, that you learn from, and you see that in the horse world, right? Where, there's no shortage of free advice
Right.
that people are giving
Free
you.
bad
And
advice.
it can be really bad.
Free
It
really
can
bad
be really
advice.
bad.
But I truly believe this though, like, I don't think anybody is meaning to give bad advice.
Right.
In their context, in their situation, maybe with a particular horse, maybe it worked. It probably did. That's why they're
Right.
saying that.
Right.
But every circumstance is so different.
Right.
And just because it worked with this horse doesn't mean it's appropriate for that horse.
Right.
Well, that's
that-
what's great about this. We get such a wide variety, but also I worked at a public riding stables and I had 54 horses in my string, and buddy, that'll give you a heck of an education. So, but we have this wild sampling that nobody has access to. And even our veterinarians are like, "You'll have the weirdest stuff happen," and it's like, well, yeah, because that's
If we haven't seen it yet,
like
we
we've
will.
read about this, but we've never got to see it. This
I
is
have
so cool.
So many times vets have said it would only be here. And I'm like, but there are people that come from a background and maybe they only raise Morgans and they've purchased and they know that industry and they know the horses, and the horses tend to be kept in a certain way
Sure.
and certain blood. So it's a more controlled environment. And I like that. I can appreciate that. But when a boomerang comes from somewhere else and they're like, I don't know. And it reminds us, because of how often we get something different, we don't know it all. But we do rally around, if this is going to happen, we're going to learn all we can from it.
I love that.
So that next time, even if we hear about it from somewhere else, we have good information to give someone, and we don't have to do it blind again.
Awesome. Yeah.
So
I mean, we pulled a horse through tetanus, and we're never going to do that again. But we pulled a horse through
because
tetanus.
he was
He
never
was
okay.
mentally okay. It changed his brain.
But people were like, you can't do that. You can't get the horse through tetanus. And Susanna had him and did. And it's one of those things now, if we wouldn't do it again, because
Gotcha.
we know the other side of it.
It was tough to pull him through the tetanus. We had
imagine.
to keep him in the dark. Couldn't clean his stall because the more noise you had, the more his muscles got rigid and the more the tetanus spread.
Mm.
And
it took a long time to realize it left impact.
Yeah.
It was not something quick. So things like that, you learn what you would do again, what you wouldn't do again.
Sure.
And I'm big on that. Like, let's not keep learning the same lesson over and over, but being aware that just because it didn't go right once, in some instances, maybe do try it again. That wouldn't be one.
Maybe on a foal. I might try it on a foal,
yeah.
but
But-
definitely.
But then, going back to that though, because also too, there are people who are looking for mentors, looking for people to get help from. And one of the things, like, you go to people who have the experience, and that makes a huge difference, because you talk about like the literally over 1,000 horses that have come in and gone that you guys have worked with, put hands on, helped, all that kind of stuff. It makes a difference. I have a lot of young trainers will come to me and they're like, how do I become a great trainer? I'm like, well, have you started 100 horses? Well, I've maybe trained 100, or have you started 100 horses? It's like, well, start there.
Yeah.
Because you learn so much in those experiences, and it doesn't matter how much book knowledge you have, and it's valuable, I'm not negating that, but there's nothing like being in the thick of it and having that
Right.
experience at your fingertips, where you have, feel and muscle memory and instinct, and it's based on actual, like you're saying, like data, that you've experienced with that horse.
We've
Well, and-
always tried to find a university that would come and do a research paper on.
Yeah, we've had a lot of interest in like refeeding syndrome being really studied new. Like the old information's very outdated. It's in our experience very inaccurate. But
It's better than nothing,
finding
but-
anyone that will, I have to get on to Susanna because Susanna doesn't have a science mind about things. She has a lot of interest in mechanical things. Susanna will put information out there as if we've done a peer-reviewed study. And I'm like, Susanna, you've got to read. So I'm going in changing the words. Stephanie's a scientist by degree initially. And she's like, "What is happening?" And but I
Not
get
that what I'm saying is wrong. It's just that
you can't say it as if it's some kind of an authority, So I'm going in like, I know Susanna, we believe, and I'm kind of a skeptic about a lot of things. So even things I believe to be true, I believe them to be true. But I'm not going to put it. I'm like, but there's. But again, it comes back to having a group of people that are reviewing each other's statements and our thoughts. Like, it's not like we're holding each other accountable and ourselves accountable for what we're putting out there.
And that's what's interesting about like today's day and age is so much different from even just 10 years ago with the amount of information and how quickly we can get information out there, right? And I think that's important though. I mean, yes, the science and backing things, but also like I'm sharing my experience, And it's like, this is my experience. This is what's worked for me. But
Take it or leave it.
Yeah, you got to use your common sense.
Right.
So, we butt heads sometimes, and sometimes I win and sometimes she wins. But the one that I can think of recently is the horses here were turning really orange. And I'm like, listen, you got an iron problem somewhere in there. She's like, no, the feed is blah, blah, blah. The minerals are blah, blah. I'm like, you got to do something because there's an iron problem here. And we've finally sent the water off to be tested. And the water came back so high in iron. And the kind of iron that's bad for horses is the invisible iron. It's not the one that turns everything orange. So nobody believed that there was high iron in the water here until that came back. And it's like whoppingly off the chart. Like I called the lab and she's like, listen, if this was a cattle farmer, he'd be really upset because his cows would be unthrifty.
But when you share that information online, there's a million people will tell you research where we're going with that and the water and the iron, that's not accurate. And what was funny about that, so Susanna's like, see, it was high iron. Then she took the horse home that was orange, and he's orange at her house too.
No, he's getting better again, though.
No, he's back and forth. But so it wasn't anything to do with the iron, but it was good to know that that's something we can solve. You can put, a filtration system on and lower the iron because beyond even color, excess iron in horses is a huge issue. And even before coloring, we have seen there's a lot of connections to metabolic issues and hoof issues, and it's costly to counteract it by upping the zinc and copper. It's costly. So as a rescue, fiscally, it'd be easier to keep the iron out than to try to counteract the iron with very expensive, mineral stuff. And and there are tons of people will reach out when we'll share things like that. And, it'll connect with them. They're like, oh my gosh, I was struggling with this too. And, so it's a cool thing. It's a large number of people. And I appreciate how many people are willing to say, hey, I think I'm doing it wrong.
Sure.
Not as many as I wish, but ultimately, with Susanna, I think it was her birthday this year. When is your birthday? Was in June, July?
July the 10th.
And I wrote a birthday post and I called her my life partner. I was like, I've never spent more time on the phone. Yeah, Susanna's like, I don't know about that.
That's weird.
And I've never spent so much time on the phone. We literally, if I'm driving and traveling, because I haul constantly, I'm always on the road. I'm on the phone with Susanna, and we're always sorting out some horse issue. I mean, and it could be 5 hours of sorting out one issue. And I'll be like, hey, why don't you Google this and look up this paper? And I mean, that's just what we do, every day in and day out, So we really do care about the outcome of horses, whether they're here or some other rescue or some other person, just a private,
Sure.
a private home, got a horse from somewhere. It doesn't matter. We want that horse to do well. So.
I love that.
It's so demoralizing, though, when they reach out and they're like, can you tell me how to do this? Okay, this is how you do this. No, that's too much. I can't do that. I'm like, then why'd you bother to reach out?
Sure. Yeah, that is tough. That's tough when you're working with people with horses because, like you said,
been 2 hours on the phone with somebody telling them how to straighten it out, and they're like, I just can't do this. It's too much.
And it goes back to the hard work. And I feel like, to be successful with horses, you have to have a passion for it. You really do.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that you really thrive, you love, because if you're just winging it, it gets exhausting.
Well, something that I've seen happen, and I have been all over the country, and I've met a lot of trainers, some internationally world-renowned trainers, some have great followings, and worked with a lot of people, visited, watched, and I can tell, you can watch somebody who's in it for the horse. You can see the little subtleties about the horse when nobody's watching, how they are with the horse. I won't say the trainer. This is a positive story, not a negative. And he's lovely. I was at his facility and nobody was looking. And I walked back by the aisle and he was just standing there with one of the boarder's horses, just the way he was patting the horse so nobody was watching. Just little things that you see that do they really care about horses?
Yeah.
Do they really? And everybody that trains does not. Does not, even if it doesn't even mean they're doing something wrong, they just lack that thing.
It's just their business.
It's a business.
Not their passion.
And they may even have thought they liked horses, right? You thought you liked them, and you realize this could be a business, or your parents did it, or your grandparents, and you know how to do it. But I have just, seen it's probably 50-50, whether do you really actually even care about the horse? And then not that I'm seeing abuse or anything like that. They're doing a good job, but I'm like, you just don't really care, and that matters. It can be lesson instructors, trainers. There are people who own horses that are that way.
Sure, absolutely.
So I mean, my goal is our horses land with somebody who really truly cares about the horse at the end of the day, and that they're working with trainers. And we try to pick judges for the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off that I believe really care about the horse. It makes all the difference, I think, in the way they score, and the way everything about them, like what they're willing to do.
So you had mentioned that you don't really consider yourself like a horse girl, a traditional horse person, that really your focus is on saving the horses. What do you mean by that?
Well, so if you see me at the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off, I'll be in tennis shoes and no Western paraphernalia on, nothing.
Nothing wrong with tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes. I like a good stiletto. I don't camp. I'm not honestly, by the time, for any reason, and I consider camping in a camper. I'm not. That's not my life. But I have loved horses since I was a little girl. My mom said my first word, and she told this story before the rescue ever existed, that my first word was horsey. She's like,
wow.
It wasn't dada or mama, it was horsey. And we were very offended. I was my mother's first child. And she's like, how is this kid going to say horsey at 9 months old? And so I think I certainly was born with that passion for horses, but I could care less if I ever ride a horse. I mean, I've ridden, a lot on and off. I don't care. It's just not, my connection is saving horses. I saw them, they had a need, and I want to fix it. And that is who I am as a person anyway. Gotcha. But so I think it just really, horses, it's not, with horses, the way you connect to them, it can be so vast. And I think that's why I believe so much in horses teaching leadership. In major corporations, horses helping foster children heal, horses helping addicts heal. And some people really just enjoy the outdoor sports activity of a partnership with a horse. Sure. That is not me. I do not. I also am really resistant to hearing feedback and applying it in the moment. So I'm not a good person to give a lesson to. But it is funny to people. They expect when they meet me, not maybe watching me on social media, but if they've talked to me, they expect me to kind of personify this horsewoman. And I am the opposite of all of it. I have a ton of knowledge, and they expect all the things I've done, if I had any interest to have picked up training. Potty training my kids was hard for me. My dogs, they're not really house trained like I'd like. It's not me. Those are things. But so how do horses fit in your life when you can't fit the mold society says means you're a horse person, right?
Sure.
And yes, they can. Yes, they can fit. And I'm a great example of that. So my horses, I have 2 horses, both straight Egyptian Arabians. I got them at 2 and 3 years old. And I have ridden my horse, the mare, maybe 10 times
Okay.
in 15 years.
She sent her to my house to be broke. My daughter
Yeah, her
broke
daughter put her under saddle.
Oh, that's awesome.
I waited till she was 7 because I was in no hurry. Had her 5 years. And I've ridden her. I went through a little spell where we were filming with Horse TV, and it was necessary that I was out for the footage. So that's literally the time that I rode the horse. And then my gelding, he's never, I don't think anyone's been on him since, well, at least 12 years. You know, he just lives as a pasture puff on the land. People say horses need a job. Mine do not want one.
It was really funny when she came after my daughter had her mare for a while and she was going pretty good. She came down to ride her, and I really pictured her as a horse person.
And I'm like,
she hopped on her horse, and I'm like, what are your elbows doing?
And it's just not zero interest. And it's not, I mean, I'm super confident. In the beginning of the rescue, I did have to ride everything to see if it was safe. And so I'm very confident. I'm not scared. But it's just not something that I find joy in. The place with horses I find joy is getting the horse, fixing the horse, getting the horse into a home and feeling comfortable about where that horse is. That's what I enjoy about horses. Saving them. That's what I like to do. And it's what I do well. And it's what I
love that, because there's so many people who have horses and they take really good care of them, and the horses are healthy and, you know, they're living a good life, and they might not be riding the horse for whatever reason.
Right.
And the one thing I hear from people is, I feel so guilty. You know, people will tell them, there's this old school mentality, well, that horse has to have a job. Well, no, it doesn't.
They don't care.
You know, listen, my horse, so my mare lives here at the rescue now in the last few years because we needed like a stable, a herd needs a stable component. Everything else comes and goes. They're adoptable. They're leaving for training. So that dynamic of the herd, she's like the matriarch. She's always there. She's a boss. And it keeps the herd from changing. You know, she's always the boss. She'll pick a gelding that's her buddy, and they rule the herd. So that she stays here. Occasionally they've used her in clinics or lessons, but she's very resistant to work. And if I go out there, she's like, I know what this is, and she'll run away. She leaves. She's like, I'm not into it. I don't have to do that. She has no work ethic. She's never had to work for a living. She doesn't want to. And that's the way I like it. I understand. And so a horse does not need a job. There are horses that we've had come through that I think that really do thrive with a lot of human interaction.
I had one.
Yeah, and there are some.
Yeah, I had one that she would have been really sad if I hadn't gone out to visit her. And I lost her to ringbone, and I put her to sleep because her ringbone was so bad.
Sorry to hear
and
that.
the pony that I have now could care less. She's like, when I thought
Indifferent.
I thought I wanted one like the one I lost, but now I know that God knew that now my life is too busy to have a needy horse like that. And this pony's like, come out and see me or don't. I don't give a crap.
There's a horse in the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off this year, and of the, I think around 13 horses that have come through, in the beginning, they were all at my house to start. And I'm the only person in the rescue that handles every horse in the rescue. Like everyone else is, Susanna's somewhere else. You know, Stephanie's here. They're all over. I'm who handles them, moves them. At some point, I have interacted with every single horse, which would lead you to think there have been many, given that I would have wanted to keep. There have not been, honestly. But there's a horse in the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off this year. I fostered him for 2 years. His name's Toby. He's a black Arabian. And I did so because he had such a wonderful mind that I had to wait for the right trainer. So he's not in the competition portion. He's in the showcase portion where we will select a trainer and they don't compete, but they train them and they set a fee. And I wanted a certain trainer to have him. I knew that she was who he needed. So I kept him at my house until she had an opening and accepted him this year. But I thought about keeping him. I really, even now it kind of hurts my feelings. I do not need another horse. And this horse really loves a person to be with him, you know, where my horses don't.
He wants to snuggle.
He really wants that interaction. Like, he wants to know, what do you think about this? Like, what are we doing today? Not necessarily to say he wants a job. He does seem happy with a job, but he wants a person involved in his life.
Gotcha.
That is not something I can offer. So it was hard, but, you know, it was just, that's not, that he was always a foster, but that vein of like recognizing what does that horse need, and that may mean you buy a horse or you adopt a horse and you get home and you realize after, give it 6 months, but maybe it's really not a fit and maybe you can't get there. And it's
Right.
okay to say, this just isn't a fit because there is the right fit out there.
Yeah.
Give it a good effort. Don't just throw in the towel because it's hard. But I recognize this horse needs, and there's somebody out there will just love the hair off of him.
Right,
And that's what
right.
he wants his hair rubbed off from
Not
love
trying to
and grooming.
force,
And,
yeah.
Yeah.
I love
and
that.
so, look.
There's been fosters that, there's nothing wrong with the horse. There's nothing wrong with the foster, but they just don't gel at all. And the foster's been like, listen, I don't know what it is, but this horse doesn't like me and we can't get along and you're going to have to trade me fosters. I've done it personally myself. I've sent one back.
And so typically is they're volunteering for that. Has there ever been a time where you've kind of had to say, I don't think this is a good fit for you guys? What does that look like?
Yeah, like
Recently with we had a horse that was in the ATFO last year, and an adopter. He didn't get adopted at the ATFO. The trainer took him back. The adopter met him some months later,
Okay.
and adopted him. And she kept trying, and she was trying, but she had a lot of fear. And she had a lot of fear about horses after an accident. Had been a lifelong horse person, and but had an accident at some point. Really afraid. And horses, reactive, fearful horses, in my opinion, tend to play, or all horses I think feed off what we're doing. But the last thing that a horse like this guy needed was a person who was fearful.
He needed
because he needed somebody who was confident that approached things that said everything's fine and we're going. And that's what he needs. So we, as it went along, we met with her, sent Nelson out to work with them, and just kind of had to walk her through it to make her know it's okay. You've tried, and this is truly not a fit. It was hard to see right off, but this isn't a fit. Let's just let him come back. We will find him the right fit because we can.
Okay.
And just talking him through that. I mean, we're not going to force someone, but she needed, somebody just to tell her it's okay. You're not failing the horse. You've tried, but you are who you are.
Sure.
And he is who he is. And
Sure.
a reactive worried horse is a reactive worried horse. And they can start to seem very different with the right person. But if you're both that way, you're just feeding off of each other, in my opinion. And so, yeah, and we've done that. There's been other instances.
We've had to do it with fosters too. Be like, listen, your feeding program is fine for some, but it's just not working for this guy. Or your grass pasture is too big and this guy needs something smaller.
Diplomacy goes a long way,
Yeah.
Or fosters that have worked with us for years will speak up and say, hey, that new horse that came in, I'd like to foster that horse. And I just have to say, you just not the wrong skill set, wrong setup. But I'm sure we have another horse. And is a lot of personalities, and it's people management all the time,
We have a bay
management.
thoroughbred mare here that every volunteer here loves except for me. She was at my house and she
She
couldn't
found her
stand
very
each other.
unpleasant.
I'm like, I don't like this horse. She doesn't like me.
When I want what I say is I want this horse to do well, but it needs to go do well somewhere else.
Somebody else.
And I call when I don't like a horse, like when we don't gel, I still, again, want the best for the horse, but I'll be like, you're not a quality animal.
Yeah,
That's my thing.
she's mean about that.
I'm mean about it. I'm like, not a quality animal.
Shut up. That horse is fine. You just don't like
and
her.
it'll be, and I'll like the horses here that everybody is like, I wish this horse would get out of here. And I'm like, I think he's nice. And, so understanding that everyone is that way. We could go through the barn at the ATFO, let all the judges mess with all the horses, and we're all going to have horses. We're going to go, and this one's, and it's going to be different. And that's, and I think understanding that is a great place to start if you're looking for a horse. Really take time, because you're not going to gel with the horse just because he's a pretty color.
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
Though I will say, every black Arabian that's come through the rescue, I've liked them all. I think anyway. But yeah, I haven't adopted any, so that tells you they weren't for me. They weren't for me. So.
You mentioned earlier, you said something, I'm paraphrasing, you said, when I see something, I have to fix it, or something where does that come from? Tell me about that.
Well, actually, not horse related, but I grew up, my dad was born in 1923 in Lincoln County, West Virginia, super impoverished. His dad was murdered when he was 6 years old. They brought the severed body. They tied him to the railroad tracks. They brought the severed body to the door. My daddy remembers his mommy opening the door, and there's his dad's severed body. And this is graphic, but that's, he grew up that way. So then his mother was trying to care for 10 children in the mountains of Appalachia. as a washerwoman with no man. And back in those times, it was standard for people to come and take the children. And they'd take them for labor, essentially. It was commonplace. And
I'd like to do that now.
yeah, I need some labor.
I need some labor.
People came from, you know, all around the county and showed up at the door. And my Aunt Peep, who's still alive, she's in her mid-90s, she said, her mommy said, you know, I'm going to keep them as long as I can. I'm not going to give any of them away. And she kept them all. Nobody ever took any. She kept them all. But Daddy said, you know, he went hungry a lot. He was starved. I mean, just starved. And so when he ended up was drafted in World War II, he came back, went into underground mining, and he said, I'm not going to keep working for somebody else very long. You know, in his mind, he'd tell himself that. And he ended up borrowing some money to open a little store. And that store is kind of legendary now. He's got a bridge named after him because he fed the whole community.
Wow.
I mean, for decades.
Wow.
I mean, 55 years. I have a post that went viral. It was like millions of people read it with pictures of the booklets of all the credit. And there were 10,000. They're still in the old store. We don't own the property, but I've gone in and we've taken pictures. And the number of people are like, that's my pawpaw's name on there. And, you know, I will say nobody offered to pay the bills that were never paid, but that's fine. Daddy wouldn't have wanted him to anyway. But Daddy, for 55 years in that store, and he's a millionaire, but he lived like a very poor man. And I'm one of 14 or 16 children he had. Was the first that he had with my mom. And I just watched service. It was just service and fixing, and the intent that you are here for service. You're here to fix something. There's something you can fix, so you will fix it, whatever it is, and whatever your hand finds to do, then do it with all your might. And my mom kind of had that same, you know, that's what I saw were people identifying an issue and killing themselves to fix it. And so I really just think it's genetic. You know, my dad imparted that so much to me. And horses were the thing that I was just drawn to, but it wouldn't have been sufficient for me to say just horses, because through the work of Heart of Phoenix, the number of human beings that have messaged me and said to me, whatever aspect was coming in when the horses that they had loved and their spouses passed away, that they know that they are not taken care of, and we come in and they know they're safe, and being able to let that go. Or caretakers that have moved in here that were homeless and then learned a skill and
or the lady who called us because her veterinarian wouldn't put her horses to sleep, and we found somebody
desperate,
to do it.
you know, just for a resource. And so the way that it allows me to, I feel like, fix the horses, but see humans are impacted. It's something that makes me think, I guess, a daddy. But I watch my dad be taken advantage of a lot. So I think horses for me feel like a safe place, because we can really go into a horse's life and can control the outcome.
Sure.
And you start to try to help people. And as I watch my dad really, the kind of the suffering he went through with the amount of money he gave, and how it never worked out the way he hoped for people, because we are free will beings moving around doing what we will.
Sure.
And often what we will is not what we ought and all that. So I think horses feel like a safe place for me, but inadvertently, but still with intention, humans are radically helped as well. But it seems a little more indirect. And that has made me feel like that's the right path for me. That I just come from that genetic of, like, the people behind me, they want to fix something, they want to help. And so it just, for me, it ended up with horses feeling like the right spot for that source of help to come from on my end.
That's pretty cool. 1,000 horses later.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Incredible.
I like to help people too.
Oh, Susanna's a helper.
Yeah, I'm a helper.
Susanna's a helper in a different way. Like Susanna finds the little things, again, that I would miss and never think about.
Well, we were talking earlier. You were talking about your journey with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And some of, like, the little things that you had wished that when you were in that journey that someone had shared with you that would have made a difference to prepare you.
Right.
Speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with 2 types of breast cancer, which was really surprising. when I had the mammogram, I knew from the technician's face that I had cancer, but I didn't have any idea that a week later they would come back and say, you have 2 types. And that necessitated me having a mastectomy in the one that was in the breast that was cancerous, but I elected to have both of them because I have a really strong family history of cancer, and I didn't want to be back in this boat again. But what I found through the breast cancer journey is that the medical profession does not prepare you for what that journey is going to look like. They don't tell you these helpful hints that would make your life so much easier. Like, for one thing, that is an easy thing, they make these shirts that you can wear while you have your drains for breast cancer that have pockets in them, and you tie the tubing to the shirt, and then when you're sleeping, your drains don't run away from you and you wake up jerking on your stitches really bad. They're contained. So that was super handy that another breast cancer survivor had told me about those, that the medical profession doesn't give you any literature or give you any helpful hints about this at all. So it was kind of a funny breast cancer journey. I wound up on a peds floor, and pediatric nurses don't know much about double mastectomies, so they made a lot of mistakes, and it's just kind of a comedy of errors thing. And we were headed to California to Monty Roberts right after my surgery, and I browbeat my surgeon into making it so I could hop on the airplane. So I had just got
Priorities, yeah.
yeah, I got my last drain out the day before we hopped on the airplane. And it was just the things that you go through as a woman with breast cancer, but also as a horse person with breast cancer. Because one of the things that they don't tell you and you don't think of is when you have a double mastectomy, they take all of your chest muscles out. Like, there's nothing left. It's my rib cage and my skin. And recovering from that and still going on with horse chores with no kids left in my house has really been a struggle. It's the things that I can't do now and I've never been a big strapping farm woman like Tania anyway, but I had to move 65 bales of hay the other day by myself, and it took me 5 days to move the 65 bales of hay. And so I got to move, but it's just been a really interesting journey that I'm very public about, because I think that if women coming behind me know that these things, it's not an easy journey. And for me, it wasn't a traumatizing journey. Like, I wasn't like, oh, my identity is gone and this is a terrible tragedy. And maybe because I knew it was coming because of the family history. Like, when we go through puberty, we get told, just start doing the mammograms and be prepared for this because it's happened so many times. So maybe that's why. But the women following behind me, I'm very public about it so that they have an easier time with it. Maybe not quite such a traumatic thing. And so we actually had a trainer last year that was 26 and had to have a double mastectomy.
Wow.
Right after ATFO, she was diagnosed.
Yeah.
And she adopted her competition horse last year.
Yeah.
And Chloe and Mario, so you would have seen them compete. And she was the only trainer maybe that adopted their horse. Well, no, several did, but she was one of the trainers that did. And so she, right after. But Susanna wrote a lot of things after the mastectomy, just talking about practical things to be aware of that really, I bet people hadn't seen. But in the vein of Susanna being a helper, she will find the small things. And like, I like a certain kind of peanut butter. And like, Susanna had it mailed to me from Amazon, and
Because for 2 years, she's like, I can't find my peanut butter anymore.
yeah,
I
and
miss
like,
my
and
peanut
here was
butter.
the funniest thing, like UPS wouldn't deliver it, so the peanut butter was like out there
The peanut
in
butter went on a
transit for
very
like
long
3
journey.
weeks, and she was like, I wanted it to be a surprise, but now it's lost. And but anyway, just I think small, like.
I
You
love
have-
people. I really
Yeah.
do. I love
Suzanne,
people.
I think for
it's
sure.
It's very demoralizing for me when people are mean, because I really love people. I really do. And when they're mean, it just really hurts my feelings. And there's nothing I like better than helping a person. And, if she was looking for a particular birthday present for her nephew, and I'm the one that found
She
it.
tracked it down online so I could go get it
Yeah,
at
I
what store and
I
which
tracked it
store
down.
in that local area had it, and
And how many do you have so that somebody won't buy it and she'll get there and it won't
it
be
won't
there?
be there. Yeah. So, and I honestly think I write a lot and I talk a lot about my nature was to like my family. and I was not I'm a very big personality, and I'm a very center of the attention person since I was little. But I was very set on the people that I was born with are my people. I don't need friends. I'm uninterested in the public, except maybe in some kind of platform kind of way. And it was the, catastrophic event that led me to even being willing to like people. And I was indifferent to them, I guess we would say. Like, even I would have wanted to help them, but not personally. Like, that personal connection to people didn't come easy to me, where I think it probably has come very much to Susanna's nature. It is not my nature. It was hard in the beginning of founding Heart of Phoenix because I just thought, well, I'll just do it myself. It was, I feel like the Lord had to work that through, where you need people. You just do. You need people, and you need to be able to find people you depend on and allow them to grow and have a thing and be part of a thing with you. So my statement is, I think it was Mr. Rogers actually originally said this, but it was look for the helpers. And it's so true. And building Heart of Phoenix, when I realized you need people, then I really did embrace it, because once I learn a lesson, I learn it. And looking for people who want to help. So there's no one in Heart of Phoenix that I do not believe wants to help. And the way that we help is different. We don't need somebody to help the way I do necessarily. We need somebody who does it differently, because then you hit every facet. So I think essentially Heart of Phoenix really is a group of the helpingest people that I've ever seen anywhere. But it wasn't, again, not happenstance. I had to really seek that out and cultivate that group of people, because that's what I envisioned it being. People that look for, what can I do to make this better? How can I help? And they do that for each other, because there's been all kinds of crisis and sad things happen in the group that makes up Heart of Phoenix. And the group it's not a big evolving group. It's a pretty static group of people. We build on it and it grows.
Sure.
But it's very rare somebody comes and goes,
What does that look like over time, right? So, I mean, it sounds like you've got a great group of people right now, great helpers. But I imagine that there's been like bumps in the roads and things like that. Like, what
We've
are those?
had some owies.
we have.
What do those things look like?
Over the course of Heart of Phoenix, from beginning to where we are now, we started with 3 or 4 people. It started with me, and then I found 3 people and added a person here and there. Through the course of the organization in the 15 years we've existed, there have been less than 5 people that we've had issues where they were really an integral part and now are not.
Okay.
And I usually, really in all of those situations, they were situations where a large number of other volunteers and core parts of the rescue were saying, hey, Tania, you're seeing a lot of good in this person, but it's not true. And I don't think of myself...
Which is so weird, because she's such a glass half full, half empty
it
person.
It is so weird to be the pessimist.
But it happens.
I
think it's partly because she really wants to fix something, and she just won't give up. And it's like, would you throw it in the trash already?
That really is what happens. So, and a lot of the people that have come that are parts, and they would tell these stories, and they're their stories. But a lot of the people that make up Heart of Phoenix had some compelling reason that they were in this, that has been healed or helped, or they have been elevated by being. Not every single person, but most of them.
Right.
I certainly, myself, it exists because of that. So in that, if you've got people that are coming that have a need within themselves that they're trying to fix, even if they don't realize it, then if I get real connected to that, and I really, really want to fix it. But again, going back from, I need to always remind, how did it work for your dad, Tania? But it left a beautiful legacy on his end. But in those instances, the times where someone has been a core part and it hasn't worked, it is one that where I was holding on, trying to fix someone, instead of just realizing you can't do that. People have to decide in themselves to make a change or to be fixed. And if they don't want to be, you've got to let them go. So I think I've gotten better at it, but probably not.
Rescue work is it's very heavy. Rescue work
It
is
is
very
heavy.
heavy.
If
I
you
think
carry
that's
the
one of the
people and
reasons-
the horses,
I
and
think
we
that's
do.
one of the reasons why she and I go around doing the headstands somewhere. Or I really think that's
Brings the
part of it is
comedy.
because it's got that comedy. And back to the breast cancer journey, she came to my house like I think it was 2 days after I got out of the hospital. And she won't hardly stay at anybody's house, but
No.
when she
I
first
feel like
started,
that's personal, and I don't like it.
when she first started staying at my house, I didn't have a bedroom for her because I had all my kids, so she had to sleep on the couch. And now she won't sleep in the bedroom. She's like, the couch
That's
is
what I'm
mine.
used
I'm on the
to.
couch. So she gets down there and she's like, you haven't made up my bed. And I'm in the
Literally
armchair
got
with
drains in.
drains. I'd just been out of the hospital 2 days. We turned that into a funny thing on
I was like,
Facebook.
look at this. Is this how you have a house guest? Look at this. Look at this couch. It's a mess.
But I think that's one of the reasons she and I both sometimes are playful people. And I think that's one of the reasons why that we go around doing the headstands in weird random places.
all over the country.
All over the country.
But I think people don't realize how heavy it is. It is a big, heavy load of things. And I have, we have a particular trainer who I try to get out of their comfort zone because I think I want success for people. And I really invest in people. If I see something in them, I want them to take it as far as they can because that's what I try to do. And sometimes that helps them and sometimes it annoys the daylights out of them. But there's some fear in this particular trainer, and I think it really holds this person back from being so elevated and successful. And they believe that is true as well. But they're like, if you're scared and then you don't move forward. And I'm like, I've been scared to do everything I've ever done and to do it anyway. And they're like, yes, that is true. The fact that you do it anyway.
Ask her how many years I tried to beat her into driving a trailer, though.
Yeah, it took
Ask her.
years. It took years to get me just to haul the trailer. And once I decide like something is, this is not for me, someone else I can get to do it,
Sure.
then I will let them do it. But then also once I start doing it, then it's harder to get the other people because they're like, well, Tania can do it. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have started that. But yeah, just it's a heavy sort of thing if you do it well and if you do it in a big way. So
When you say that it's heavy, was there ever a point, or did it ever come to a point where you had to weigh like that heaviness and say like, is this worth it? Or is this, healthy? Or
yeah, I think I do that
I think we
constantly.
do that a lot.
I do that a lot. I mean, I do. I don't know with how much sincerity. It's just like you have these thoughts and you have to control your thought process. I don't know that I've ever really thought, because I don't leave things behind. I carry everything. Can
I ask specifically about the heaviness? Because people at home who don't know like what's involved in a rescue,
yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, I think part of it, some of it's, I think, real obvious that you're dealing with horses that have had, in many times, a lot of neglect, sometimes abuse, and we have to, I feel that weight of cleaning up messes you didn't make. And we are a very specific kind of organization that holds life quality so high. So it means making the choice to euthanize a lot, and we should, and it's what we should do. But because we have like an open door shelter policy for horses that need euthanasia, and I'm the person who loads the horse, I'm the person who takes them, to the landfill because that's the disposal option we have. I've been out on that landfill in the winter and been like, well, this is beautiful. I really love this. I mean,
Sure.
So it's a lot. And knowing that, seeing a lot of horses that a little bit of investment from someone would have changed that outcome.
Right.
It's different if the horse lived a great life and it's at the end of its life and its life quality is good and you're making that call. But to know, hey, just a little bit of something could have changed 70% of these outcomes, that's hard. But also knowing that process people don't like it. they don't like what's realistic and true and necessary. There's no glamour in it.
Right.
You know, I always say people, you know, they'll watch me on social media and they're like, how glamorous? And I'm like, yes. You know,
rescue
yes.
others.
It looks one way, but, you know, so I've been out there many a time at the landfill going, I'm in it for this is glamour. I'm in it for the glamour.
And there's an emotional investment too.
Yeah, I mean, some of these
horses,
horses, I have been sure we're going to make it. And I, you know, I choose to not be paid. You know, I don't take a salary. As a board member, you wouldn't, but as a director, you know, most people would. I don't.
I got my salary doubled this year.
Yeah, I always tell Susanna she's getting it doubled because it's zero. So every year we double it.
I got a Christmas bonus.
We're made up primarily of volunteers. And so I know how hard we work to generate the funding. And so sometimes there's a lot of guilt if I invested funding in a horse that maybe I shouldn't have. You know, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that was a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't have put the money there. Now we've euthanized the horse after 7 months, and maybe the horse, you know, and I'm all over things, and I don't let things go, and so that's my nature. It's just to make sure we do it better the next time, but then you just beat the dead horse, you know, over and over, and I'll be awake at like 6 a.m, like, oh God, you know.
I think that's a lie. You're not awake at 6 a.m.
Only if I haven't been to sleep. I don't wake up. It's only when I haven't gone to bed. Well, once I've gone to bed, I'm not going to get up at 6 unless it's an emergency. But
the people part is heavy too, because I'm the primary I'm the telephone answer, and sometimes, you know, we're very responsible. There is a number that we can have, and that is the number that we can have, and so people will call and they'll be crying, and it'll be this big awful story. And I'll be like, I'm really sorry, we could put you on the waiting list, but it's really long right now. And they just on and on and on. Or they'll get mad and they'll be like, oh, I thought you called yourself a horse rescue. I'm just going to go sell him to slaughter next week. Or I'm just going to go shoot him right now. And you can't, you can't capitulate and be like, okay, we'll take him.
Yeah.
Because there is a number that you can have, and that's what you have to do.
And not even so much that's the only type of person, but you have the people who want to turn the horse over and they want you to tell them that you're going to keep their 3 old horses together and that euthanasia is not on the table, or that their blind horse that needs its eyes removed that's 32, that you know, telling people news they don't want to hear every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day.
If I had a nickel for, I thought you were a horse rescue. How many times
common.
I've heard that? It's just so hard to hear that all the time.
And because we have done a good job, and there has been a lot of, you know, notoriety, as much as you would have in the horse rescue world, around Heart of Phoenix. You have a lot of people who don't like us because people don't like people to do well. And so you get a lot of people that are just looking to cause an issue and make things not go well. Now, I will say, given the size and the scope, it's not been as much as you might think through the years. But in the last few, it's been a lot. But you expect it with growth. But there is a lot of that, and I'm not sensitive, and I don't look for the bad stuff. Like, I'm not going to go look for what someone's saying. Susanna will send it to me, and I'm like, I don't want to read it. You know, I'm not curious either by nature, really, about stuff. The only time I get curious is if we have a problem and I have to solve that specific thing. But I'm not a curious-minded person, so today, I don't wonder what people say.
You also mentioned euthanasia, and for a lot of people, like, that's a bad thing. You know, don't oh my God, you know, save the horse at all costs. At all costs. Because and a lot of people don't realize, like, sometimes I've heard you guys say it's like that is saving the horse.
Right.
It is.
Right.
100%.
And sometimes the idea is, you know, you want to keep that horse alive as long as possible, but is it really for the horse,
or
right?
Yourself.
Or is it for you?
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that? And then when a horse gets to a point where it's like, hey, like we're gonna have to take this route, like how do you make that determination?
So it kind of goes the way I've ended up with the mindset that now Heart of Phoenix, you know, really upholds was Heart of Phoenix. Phoenix is the horse, not the first horse I rescued, but it's the first horse I rescued where it made me decide to move into actually an official nonprofit status and create an organization versus doing it on my own. And that was a horse that came in terribly foundered, and her feet were, 18 inches long or so, and elf shoes. And I tried to save her because that's what the outcome I wanted. And she ended up, my vet, who was very candid. There are many veterinarians who would have applauded me moving forward. I had a really realistic vet back then. He's like, bad idea. Don't do this.
Sure.
And I appreciate that, but I didn't listen. And I went ahead and had the farrier work on her, and ended up her coffin bone came through the sole. It was horrifying.
Yeah.
And it made, she really wasn't, she had been in suffering, but she was in a place when she came to us, that's what she knew. So while it was not okay, it wasn't an additional burden. The process of trying to fix it created additional pain that she was unfamiliar with.
Gotcha.
And it was a hard lesson, but again, I try to learn that lesson.
Sure.
And so after that, it made me kind of just revisit. I had been a long-time vegetarian, reformed vegan, at that time. And I'd had a couple of dogs over my life that I had to be put to sleep. I didn't stay with them. Like, to me, I don't even know who that person was. Like, I don't know that person.
Okay.
But I was too sensitive about animal things to be realistic or reasonable or rational. So after seeing that, it was like eyes wide open. Oh my, what have I done? And I very much purposed that I would never do that again. It doesn't mean I haven't.
Sure.
But as years have gone on, I think it's very unusual for us to, and again, now it's just not, the whole burden is not on me. It is a collaborative. But the decision now, we really like the American Academy of Equine Practitioners euthanasia guidelines. They're very long, but they're worth reading. They go over, like, from a research veterinary scientific standpoint, how you make the decision. And we don't deviate from that. They're excellent. Too long for me to sit and explain, in detail, but
Sure.
essentially a horse that has to be on lifelong pain medication
Okay.
is euthanasia should be on the table. A horse that cannot live in a natural setting, naturally moving as they would wish.
Okay.
A horse that can safely receive the care that the horse needs. A horse that's, a horse that has the ability to have a caregiver who will oversee. So essentially a home offer, a horse that has a home offer to be able to live that life. And so we look at chronic conditions. If a horse has a chronic condition where it is certain that the horse will deteriorate and suffer.
Heaves is a good example.
Yeah, heaves is a good example. DSLD is a good example. A horse that we know will deteriorate, why would we let it deteriorate?
Right.
We have the ability to step in, and there's always somebody that will compare it to a human being. A horse is not a human being. And so there's no I won't make that comparison. It is an unnecessary, irrelevant comparison. It is an animal that is under our care. We have the ability to make choices. And so I'm going to make the choice to put euthanasia on the table on a good day. And I'm not going to put the horse out in an adoptive situation where they may have to go through a bad day or many, many bad days.
Sure.
So we try to make that decision really quickly, because the horse doesn't need to stay in a state of limbo. The rescue is kind of a stressful place. This place, we're sitting out here, it looks calm, but for horses, things change a lot. Horses come and go a lot. Just basically, they're going out for trainers to fosters. So this is not a home for horses. So I don't want them to stay here any longer than necessary. So if a horse comes in, we want a vet to see the horse immediately, and let's see what the outcome can be. And that said, we've done some revolutionary surgeries on horses that were very costly, that were, but that we had good cause to think the horse would have many years ahead of
Sure.
excellent normal life. Someone asked, I shared a photo on our social medias a couple of days ago of a filly that came in, was a year old. Her name was Mojito. She had an extremely significant, a catastrophic wound. And somebody asked, and it was a good question, what made this different that you would have put her through, 6 months of daily or every other day wrapping, which had to be painful, where you speak so much to not putting a horse through a lot for your own outcome.
I thought
And
that was a good
it was a
question,
good
too.
question, and I don't
Sure.
think it was meant to be hostile. There was more to the question, and I said it was a good question. I said, but this was a young horse with her mother at her side as a comfort, still nursing, even though she was a year old. We just left her on the mom because
Gotcha.
during this time of stress.
Yeah. Sure.
And we had good cause to believe she would be 100% okay
Got it.
with 30 years ahead.
And she was not morose either.
And she wasn't, and you have to, horses hide a lot of things. Babies don't know as much to hide. So this baby was cheerful, and she was able to have free movement. The leg was wrapped, but there was free movement. So, we really look at it that deeply, though, because if you're going to stall rest a horse where the outcome is 30% that it may be pasture sound, you're going to stall rest it for a year. To me, that's not something I feel comfortable doing. I don't think that's a good welfare choice. And so we're not going to. So what I tell people is we're not going to.
Sure.
You can do what you want.
Right.
We're not going to do it.
Context is so
Yeah.
important.
We've, I know you and I and Susanna, we've talked about behavioral euthanasia.
Sure.
The horse that we brought down to Texas to you, Slate, there was a moment there on the phone where I was trying to make a decision because we weren't able to get him castrated. He was a horse that I didn't feel comfortable going to most trainers. He was a horse that I knew would take a significant investment of time. And knowing we couldn't get him castrated, if that was a make or break as to him coming, the vet was there. Euthanasia was definitely on the table, because getting someone killed was not on the table.
Sure.
And holding him in limbo, unable to be vetted, unable to get what he needs, was not an option either. So there's most things behaviorally can be trained through, but we have definitely had situations where they can't.
You mentioned Slate. Tell me Slate's story and how that came about, if you would.
Well, I think that's Susanna got the call. So
Yeah.
how was the call?
Yeah, tell us
then?
about that.
So there was this young trainer who had done a lot of Mustangs, and she called, it kind of teary, really, and said that she had this beautiful, what she thought was an Andalusian cross. That was what he was reported to be, that she hadn't been able to do anything with in quite some time, because what happened to her was she had chiropractic work where they adjusted her neck, and an hour later she had a stroke.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, what was she, 26?
Something like
with
that,
a
with a
baby
baby.
that's less than a year.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And she's like, he's so beautiful that I know if I put a public post and say who wants to take him on, 50,000 people will step up for him, but he's really difficult and he'll wind up in a mess. And I've been watching you all for years, and I think you all are the right people to find the right person who can do something with him. Would you be willing to take him?
So when around the same time that we were asked to take Slate, there had been kind of a horrible set of videos circulating from another organization down south that had taken in a feral horse but didn't understand how to properly go about handling, moving, training this horse. And it was horrifying.
It was terrible.
Abusive. I mean, they roped the horse, ended up having seizures. It was...
And they
couldn't-
laughed about it on
it
the
was
video.
wild.
It was wild.
just blew my mind. And so what I had done was reach out to the ASPCA. I reached out to them and I said, what if we've got this opportunity with this horse out in Kentucky. What if we, offered to let other organizations come there and you guys fund it and watch the gentling process firsthand, and maybe record the process and just create a resource, because while I don't think there's an excuse for what happened, it reminds me that there's this deficit where rescues, we are very fortunate to have so many really qualified horse people that have over the years come into Heart of Phoenix. Every organization doesn't have that. And a lot of people are well-meaning and they love horses, but they don't have the resources. Now, that did not apply to the organization that this video circulated from, but it was a reminder that it does exist. And we've taken a lot of ferals from other organizations that don't really have the resources. So I pitched a grant for that. But in the meantime, we had to move the horse. The grant's like I hadn't heard back on the grant, so it didn't work out with Slate. We did invite. We did invite
Yeah,
some
we did
places
invite them, and no
to
one
come.
came.
No one came, but it was very kind of short notice. But honestly, he wouldn't have been the greatest example, because that was not. They weren't going to see enough that day. There are many horses we could have gone out. Nelson could have haltered him, led him around in a day. He was at the top end. As I said to you when I talked to you about taking him, at the top end, because he is savvy, because this is a horse that's been put in chutes and had a halter forced on him in the past, probably in the chutes, and he's knows
confident.
a lot. Yeah, and he's confident. So there was a lot of
probably
reasons.
nailed somebody at some point.
Oh, I bet he's got. Though they said, they told us, the husband and wife where he was, they said, and he would go after you hard in the beginning, especially like in a stall environment.
Mm-hmm. He did get over that with them, though.
Yeah,
he didn't mean it nearly so much anymore.
So he wasn't maybe the right horse. But anyway, we did end up getting a notification that we are going to get that grant. So it is still something we do want to do. The plan is to go to probably a place out west, somewhere more up toward New England, maybe somewhere in the Midwest, and host something like that, because I think it's really important information so that some abusive thing like that doesn't happen out of ignorance.
Absolutely.
But anyway, that was what our plan was. We're like, hey, we'll go do this with Slate. Ended up, we went out. They had a wonderful setup because they had done some Mustangs, so they had a really easy way to move him into this round pen that was excellent for the couple of days, Nelson worked with them. But that end of that first day, it's the only time I have been with Hop on a feral situation where I thought, I don't think he's going to get the halter on in a good way, like, in a safe, normal way where the horse was in agreement that this should happen,
Right.
Because we've seen him, just so many places. So I thought that this was going to be tough. And so then my thought, going back to things are heavy. I'm like, what have I done? What are we going to do with this horse? And only because Nelson, he has so many projects, and horses aren't his full-time thing, right? So he can only do so much. And if you tie him up with a horse like that, then every other horse that we need, you have to weigh if I extend a person here, what about when I need him 9 times over here? And the ATFO was already underway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all the trainers that we could have asked have a horse in this event, and so I was super thankful when I saw a comment. I was like, oh, buddy, we can get that horse down there. But we are known across the country for the organization that takes the ferals, and I like feral horses, I really do. Slate being different because he was savvy to people. He'd been through some stuff, and that's a harder kind of, it's the hardest kind of horse in terms of an unhandled horse. We get a lot of horses off strip mines in West Virginia and Kentucky, and they've never had an interaction other than maybe somebody's come out and fed them something, riding ATVs. Those are, as a rule, pretty straightforward and end up being lovely, and we'd much rather go through that process with those horses than to take the horse that somebody has ruined 9 different ways, 10 different times.
Had some poor experiences.
So it's kind of a blank slate in that slate. The slate was not blank.
I was really thrilled, though, when Nelson came with Slate in the trailer the day that we thought we might get him gelded, because he was an entirely different horse when he came in the trailer.
So seeing there was progress.
Nelson had worked with him and gotten him so he could walk up to him and halter him and lead him around in his round pen, and he was just so much more relaxed and not on edge until the veterinarian walked in the door, and that was the end of that.
And they were like, there's not enough drugs. There's not enough. They're like, we would kill him. And so then the thought is, well, if that's going to happen, we probably need to make that decision to just do this and just euthanize. And it was on the, he was riding the line.
on
the phone.
He was riding the line.
I had the vet leave to go on another call. She said, I can go to one more call and come back, and then I have to know, am I pulling the coggins and vaccinating him, or am I euthanizing him?
Sure.
And I'm just walking around the house. I don't know. What do I do? I called Nelson. He goes, and Nelson said, I think I'd euthanize him. He did. He said, I'd euthanize him. And Susanna felt like that. And I wasn't there, and it was, I just don't know. But then, like, I called Nelson back after you were like, no, just go ahead and bring him. I said, but Noah's willing for him to come. He goes, if he's willing for him to come as a stallion, then let him go. Let him go. He's like, it was this like a whole day of
It was
unraveling.
one of those heavy
It was
things.
rough. And
Even the veterinarian was like, he's awful pretty and I hate to do it. I mean, she would have done it, but she's like, he's awful pretty and I hate to do it, but he's carrying a lot of baggage. And where are you going to send him?
So ultimately, even before I heard from you, the question that I had was, has he made progress? Because if he has made progress, then he'll keep making it. They just tend to. And if he has, and the answer is yes, well, then we will find somewhere for him to go. We will. And, but those kinds of, sometimes you are in a place where that was too difficult to horse in a holding space he can't stay in. We have to know.
Well, see,
there's
that
an
was the
outcome.
problem. Nelson couldn't keep holding him, and Morgan couldn't hold him, and so there was, where's he going to go until we find that person?
Yeah.
You talk about making progress, and that's what a lot of people miss, that like people training their horses at home. Everybody wants to get from 0 to 60, right? Or, they're looking on YouTube for the next new thing or trick or whatever to do. And so, they want to innovate and make something new instead of just either increasing what already works, right? And, making that progress. And that's the thing, especially a horse like Slate, it's literally all he needs, right? It's just one good positive session strung after another, until enough of those positive things outweigh the bad things that he's learned.
Right.
And eventually that becomes kind of his truth that he operates in. And that's what gave me, when you guys shared to me about, Nelson working with him, being able to touch him and work with him, getting to halter, all that kind of stuff. And then you mentioned, like, at the vet, he's really being snappy and, being like a little pissy, But
He was pissed off. He's like, you ain't taking these today.
Not today.
But the fact that there had been progress made, it just means that there just needs a lot more of that repetition going on. And there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be an incredible horse. I was telling Susanna earlier, like, that's like, we're almost there. Like, being able to touch him without him snapping at you or offering to bite or wanting to kick when you get, turn towards you, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's like all that work is being uploaded in the front. Yeah. Everything else is going to be like easy peasy, easy peasy.
No, I mean, and I love those, we have lots of regular saves, right? The horse comes in, relatively uncomplicated rehab, straightforward, goes into a home. And I'm glad, every one of those, I'm glad. But because of the heavy work and because there are so many rough days, those like big stories, they get you through, and there are some, and honestly, we have this little horse that you'll be judging in a diamond division. His name's Gilligan. He came in 4 years ago this month, right before ATFO, off a strip mine. He was 2 weeks old. His mother had been hit by a car and it broke her leg. Feral horses out on the mines. And he was, as best we could tell, skid across the asphalt. So it tore off all of the skin to the bone on the legs. And by the time he got to us, it had been about 12 hours. And really dehydrated. Everything was already so contaminated. And again, the bones open, showing. And it's kind of another question where somebody could say, well, like, why not just put him to sleep? And people, not a lot of people, because we have a reputation for being very sensible, so we don't get a lot of that.
Sure.
But again, reasonable question. But so when we bucket raised him, I wrapped his legs for months and months. He went to Root and Riddle. And, there was never a point where there was a suggestion he's not going to survive. It's just like, how will this impact... How will this impact his movement, his legs? Like, how will this heal? But he was so little. And I've seen enough to know how beautifully young, like babies heal, little horses. So anyway, we've had him for 4 years. I mean, that's an investment of time. And so then the emotional, coming every day. because I'm real particular about legs and wrapping, and I've just been able to see through some incredible wounds healed. And so a trainer uploaded a video of him yesterday with a song, and he looks so beautiful in the arena, like a big grown horse. You know, he's a little tiny fella. And I don't let him castrate him until they're a year old or a little older. So he probably should have done it a little sooner.
He was a jerk.
But he's so peoply. But now he's seeing that kind of story, and I know I've already said I'm not a crier. But I'm telling you, when he does like the freestyle, I'm going to be a wreck because of that investment in the story. And stories, and that's what life's just story after story, and some are very powerful. And so I anticipate like Slate's after being a really incredible story, and like Gilligan's, now it's there and he's going to get an adoption, but it's been 4 years of a tremendous investment. And so many people along the way that like poured into that little horse to make it work. And seeing that, I think the ATFO, so the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off, gives us a real opportunity to kind of see that big end, like that wow. And I think it kind of fills the cup to where we can make it to the next year, make it to the next year.
Well, and I have to say, and I say this all the time, but I truly mean it, Heart of Phoenix has created such a strong community of people who share, who believe in the vision, and just even the intentionality of networking and connecting people together and, doing it together, like you said, which is so huge. Because you see less and less in that in horsemanship, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of the old way, the old cowboy riding off by himself into the sunset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we can have such a larger impact on their quality of life when we all work together. So the work you guys do is just absolutely incredible. And every time I interact with you guys, I learn more and more, and I'm so impressed by the work that you guys do. Before we do close, what would you say to people who are interested in maybe finding out like how to work more with you guys or how to volunteer? What do volunteers look like? Because some people might think that they have to have, specific experience or horse. Like, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how can people find and plug in and connect with you guys?
So we have volunteers that are remote all across the country. And you don't even have to have horse skills. You can just love horses and want to help horses. One of our favorite volunteers comes from New Jersey for the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off event to volunteer. And she comes for the pickup that starts in the end of April, beginning of May. And she does a lot of our online administrative record keeping.
So cool.
She's a horse owner, but she has 2 geriatric horses. And again, she's 9 hours away in New Jersey, but she's been a follower since the early days. So you can get plugged in from anywhere.
She was a fun the kill broker lot for a little while.
Yeah, she like followed us and like heard a dip. She's like, wow, nobody else is saying what they're saying. And kind of flipped over into just being a big supporter. Going back to 2011, I mean,
Wow.
when it was just me, like that long ago. So no matter what, if you have a skill set, photographers, videographers, record keeping, being somebody that can help with application processing, uploading adoption postings, there's so much remote that can be done. So whether you're a horse person or not and you just love horses, there's a way to help. Fostering, we foster horses all over the general Appalachia area. If somebody's a trainer, they have certainly, example with Slate, we'll take horses for the right type of trainer. We've hauled horses very far distances. So those fostering.
If you're a grant writer, we need those really bad.
Somebody who has experience with grants. There's just some way to help. And think about, again, administration. It can be things that you don't have to be anywhere near West Virginia, but our foster network is huge. PA, Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, Ohio,
Okay.
all over. And fostering is where more than 50% of our horses are. This facility here usually has 30 to 40 horses, but within the organization, there's 100 to 178 horses at any given time. So big network.
Yeah.
And the thing I always tell people, if you're a trainer, you're trying to build a business, it's good marketing. Adam Black, who's competing this is his 7th Appalachian Trainer Face-Off this year. 1 year he judged. So we've had 8. He's been there since year 1. He judged 1 year. He's competed 7.
That's awesome. I remember Adam from last year.
Yeah, and wonderful guy. He has a He has a video that's on our YouTube. So if you go to WV Horse Rescue on YouTube, he shares his story of how Heart of Phoenix helped him build a huge, thriving business. And he's like, if you use the platform, I mean, it can make you successful. And also, it's not just the platform. It's the network. It's the contacts. It's a built-in potential, group of people that want to buy what you're selling,
Sure.
training, or if it's clinics, whatever. And he just goes through and he's like, essentially this barn and this arena I'm standing in is here because of the work with Heart of Phoenix.
That's awesome.
And he used it. If you don't use the platform and the elevation, then that's up to you.
That happens to us. We have trainers that get in the Appalachian Trainer Face-Off, and they
have an opportunity.
They have the opportunity, and they're so
it.
stuck on themselves that they just waste it, and it's just so sad.
Which comes back to me seeing something in someone and hoping that they will see it in themselves and take it further. And everybody doesn't want to, so that's fine.
Sure, yeah.
But it is an opportunity. So if someone's interested in that, they can go to wvhorserescue.org, or specifically as a trainer, then go to AppalachianTrainerFaceoff.com, and everything about how to train for that competition, outside of that competition as a foster, it's pretty much laid out there. And everything about volunteering or fostering is on the wvhorserescue.org.
Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you guys for joining me today and taking the time to talk about what you guys do and what Heart of Phoenix is doing. And I am super excited. ATFO starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
I am super stoked to be a part of that with you guys.
This is the first time we've had a judge from out of the country. We got Lee McLean coming from Canada. So I'm like, well, and she was so thrilled to do it. But thank you so much for having us. We're going to be exhausted by the end of it, but yeah, I think it's going to be great.
Awesome.